the Middle-aged Bodcast. Getting older, but having some laughs.
Welcome to the Middle-aged Bodcast with me, Raging Rich.
And me, T.A. Shalana.
And T.A., if there's one thing today's episode proves, it's that no situation is too ridiculous when you're Batman. Not even punching a shark while dangling from a helicopter, as long as you've packed your shark-repellent bat spray.
That's right, Rich. To celebrate Batman Day, we're dedicating a whole episode to the Caped Crusader.
So I guess this one's going to fall on me a little bit, T.A., as as you like to call me, superhero aficionado. Batman Day is the 20th of September. And so we thought we'd do an episode talking about Batman movies, TV shows, things kind of from our era of pop culture, and hopefully getting a bit of our thoughts and reviews on some of these characters and also some of the actors. Batman was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger and debuted in the 27th issue of the Detective Comics comic book on the 30th of March, 1939. Actually, Tia, there's an interesting story here. Originally, Batman was only credited to Bob Kane, and it's only in recent years that Bill Finger has actually had his name attached to it as well. And this sort of goes back to, even with Marvel Comics, a lot of characters that Stan Lee created have, over the years, had their most prominent co-writers added as a co-creator, and this is sort of very much the commonplace here with Batman. I have read some Batman comics, I have read some of the graphic novels, but I know for us to have a good conversation about Batman, it's probably better that we talk the movies and we talk the TV show a little bit more, maybe.
Well, I think, in fairness, you're obviously more of a fan than me, so I don't think there's anything wrong in you talking about some of those elements. Obviously, for me to join in proceedings a bit more, we may need to veer towards some of the TV and film, but I think we should hear your reflections.
Well, I will reference them in certain points because there are a few things that I think would work really well. But let's kick it off with the first Batman for me, which was Adam West from the 1960s TV show. And anyone who's sort of our age, in their early to mid 40s or late 40s, you're going to know of the TV show Whack-A-Day that used to air. And they used to air Batman during the school holidays as part of Whack-A-Day. And so, yeah, Timmy Mallet would be on, he'd be hitting kids over the head with his foam hammer, and you'd be watching an episode of Batman with Adam West and Burt Ward playing Batman and Robin. Now, T.A., do you remember this show at all?
Whack-A-Day.
No, I mean Batman. It's Batman Day. Come on.
All right, sorry. You brought in the Whack-A-Day reference, which I do remember very well. I didn't realise Timmy Mallet was going to get a mention in this. Do I remember the Batman TV show? Yes, of course I do. It's quite iconic with the, the Kapow and all of that. So, of course, I do remember it.
So, there was actually not just the TV show. There was a movie in 1966. This starred Adam West again as Batman, and it was a very camp look at the character. There was actually a thing in the comics many years ago where comic books went from being quite dark and brooding at times, and they kind of lightened them up. And Batman was one of these characters who had this change in his entire sort of demeanor. And actually, some of the comics that I would read, even in the 80s, and some of the books that you had, Batman wasn't the Batman that you know from sort of the Tim Burton movies and things like that. But yeah, the Adam West series, I absolutely loved it. My brother and I actually have referenced a few things in there over time, even now. And we actually were lucky enough to meet Adam West many years ago at a comic book convention in Milton Keynes. My brother actually got him to laugh because there's an episode of the Batman show. There's multiple silly things that happen in the show, but there's one where the Joker, played by Cesar Romero, goes into Wayne Manor and he finds the bust that they have that when you pull the head back reveals the button to access the bat poles to the bat cave. So the Joker finds it. He's in Wayne Manor and he's trying to rob them. He's trying to sort of get access to stuff. And he and Alfred randomly have a sword fight with some swords that are on the wall. And then the Joker discovers the secret passage. So he presses the button and he clambers onto the pole. And then Alfred essentially just starts sending him up and down the pole, so he never actually ends up in the Batcave. And then Batman and Robin in their civilian guises of Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson turn up and reference that thank God their costumes were in for dry cleaning because Otherwise, the Joker could have ended up dressed as one of them and all this stuff. It's ridiculous. But my brother did reference that to Adam West and made him laugh because he said, well, how did you get him off the bat pole? Like, it's all just like, you never see it. There's episodes of like Batman and I think it's Batman and the Riddler boxing each other. There's all kinds of crazy things that went on in that show. But yeah, it's kind of the gateway into Batman for a lot of people, I think.
I suppose it wasn't. I mean, again, as you said, you're more of an aficionado of this than I. But even I would reflect to some degree the lighter nature that you're referring to of the more fun type capers of the original TV series. And I think it's reasonable to reference this is that it was parodied quite famously in a very successful British comedy, Only Fools and Horses. And I think that actually shows how much of an impact that must have had in terms of that they wanted to do that. And it was very much a take from the Adam West, Burt Ward Batman and Robin that they did, David Jason and Nicholas Lyndhurst, in that episode of Fools and Horses, which went on to be a massive hit episode. And people loved that reference to it. So that just shows you the impact that I would say Batman and Robin's, that show had on popular culture before even this sort of more modern thing with them moving to the films.
Well, even the one you alluded to there, the Only Fools and Horses episode, I actually have a set of salt and pepper shakers that is Del Boy and Rodney dressed as Batman and Robin.
Well, there you go. I mean, that I hadn't even twigged that you'd got that as the case. So that just shows you how things can sort of merge over. And that was very much of the TV show element.
And I think with Batman, that was primarily the version a lot of people knew. Even, well, as I say, in the 80s, as we were sort of growing up, that was the version I knew. And it wasn't until the 1989 movie came out with Tim Burton directing and Michael Keaton playing the role. And interestingly enough, when Michael Keaton was originally cast as Batman, there was a massive uproar about it. How dare you cast someone who's known as a comical actor as Batman? And yet he went on to become one of most people reference that he's probably their favourite or in the top 2 or 3 of Batman actors.
Out of interest, Rich, in terms of the first film, which again was quite an iconic one, particularly for the Jack Nicholson performance as the Joker, but aside from Michael Keaton, I mean, who else was in the frame?
That's a really good question there, TA. And there were a number of actors considered for the role. One thing as well that was mentioned was similar to the Superman movies. Christopher Reeve was an unknown when cast as Superman. He'd done other work, but to the mainstream, he wasn't really that well known. There were a number of actors considered. Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Tom Selleck, Bill Murray, Harrison Ford, and Dennis Quaid. There's a big list of names there.
I was just thinking, and that's the first time I've obviously seen this list. The one that jumps out, who I think could have been a great Batman, is Harrison Ford, actually.
I think Harrison Ford would be a great Batman as an older Batman. It's kind of like there's always been this fan casting of Clint Eastwood as an older Batman, referencing the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we go through some of the other films. But this was a big change, and I remember didn't see the film at the cinema, obviously too young at the time. I always liked the Adam West Batmobile, but the one that was used for the Tim Burton movies is an iconic vehicle. This is the one that's kind of the armoured vehicle, the first time you sort of see a bit of an armoured version of the Batmobile, and he's got voice control for it and all kinds of things like that. This is a very dark version of the film, but actually upon watching it, you do find there's a lot of humour in it as well. The soundtrack was done by Prince, and it did really well, which led to the sequel, which was Batman Returns, and Michael Keaton came back. The Joker, obviously the villain in the first movie, spoilers for all these movies, the Joker actually dies at the end of the first movie. And this kind of became a bit of a running theme in the Tim Burton movies. Catwoman is in it as a villain, but Catwoman's kind of a character in the comics who's portrayed as a villain, but also a bit of an anti-hero. She sometimes teams up with Batman. She has a romantic relationship with Batman in the comics. That's something that happens in this movie too. And so you have Michelle Pfeiffer playing Catwoman in this version, and famously in the TV show, a number of different actresses played Catwoman. So there was Julie Newmar, who's probably the most prominent one. Lee Merriweather played her in the 66 movie. And then Eartha Kitt played Catwoman as well in some episodes of the show. And then with this, they kind of went with a slightly different take. Michelle Pfeiffer was originally considered to play Vicky Vale in the original movie. She was dating Michael Keaton at the time. And then that didn't happen, but she ended up playing Catwoman, Selena Kyle, in the sequel. And we obviously had Danny DeVito taking on the role of the Penguin, and they changed a lot of his origin story a lot there as well. And again, they kill off the Penguin at the end. It's all a little bit of a strange kind of thing that was happening at the time with these films. It was kind of, there was never this idea of bringing a character back like they've done in future movies. It was always, well, you know, how do you beat them? Batman never actually kills them, we should point this out, but they die during various encounters with him. They made a few changes, like I say, to the Penguin's origin there. He's more of a crime boss in the comics and in sort of the more recent projects for Batman. But yeah, that was obviously the Tim Burton era.
Well, I've got some facts for you, Rich, and I'll be interested if you know this. The certification of Batman.
Was a 15 in the UK?
No. On video it was.
Oh.
It was at the cinema. It was the very first film in British cinema to be given the 12 certificate. It was introduced that year, and Batman was the first film to get it.
Oh, wow.
And Batman Returns was a 12 at the cinema, and I saw it age 10. Don't come for me, feds.
Well, interestingly enough, I didn't see Batman Returns at the cinema either. I did see Batman Forever at the cinema, and I think Batman Forever gets a bad reputation from people. Yes, it's not as good as the previous two films, but I don't think it's a bad film. There are some issues with it. I think the way they introduce Robin, and also the fact that this is supposed to be the same Batman as the Michael Keaton version. Some of the actors stay, so they actually keep Michael Goff as Alfred, but then Billy D. Williams played Harvey Dent in the original movie with the idea he would come back as Two-Face. That didn't happen in Batman Forever. They actually brought in Tommy Lee Jones to play that role. Jim Carrey came in as the Riddler. Nicole Kidman's in the movie. The love interest always seems to change in each film for Batman. It got a lot lighter in tone. They tried to introduce a little bit of comedy. Some of it hits, some of it doesn't. There is actually an extra cut of that movie that was supposed to be released this year to selected cinemas in the US of the Schumacher cut, because Joel Schumacher took over directing of the Batman series for the next two movies. And there's a load of content that actually wasn't in the finished version of the film that apparently makes it a little bit darker, and it's a shame actually, because Joel Schumacher is a great director. He did The Lost Boys, which is a really good film from the 80s. But yeah, I think that he himself did say a lot of the things were about selling toys, and so that became kind of the focal point with the films, more about the selling of the toys than the actual content of the film.
Which is interesting, because when you consider the classification of, you know, certainly the earlier films, and the darkness of them, particularly with comparison to the TV show, where, apart from the fact, obviously, I saw the second one at the cinema slightly under age, albeit with an adult, I will add. When you start sort of saying a film is only for kind of 12 and above, and I think the video release of 15 for the first one, you're moving away then from an audience that buys toys. So it's kind of interesting how they went down that route as opposed to something that was maybe more of a PG type film that would have then led to potentially a bigger market, certainly in cinema at that time, versus, you know, the modern era of today. That was the sort of the way they went with the earlier films.
Well, they went to go with the third film at one point with Tim Burton again, or with Michael Keaton, and they had got some ideas in mind, but then it all changed. They did recast Batman in Batman Forever, bringing in Val Kilmer, who's sadly no longer with us. Val Kilmer, I think, is a really good Batman. When you see him in the suit, he looks the part. He's really got that kind of persona down. But then, of course, we move on to the fourth installment. It's hard to talk about this because, for me, Chris O'Donnell comes into the third film as Robin. And he's not great, let's be honest. The version of Robin is not great in this movie. They do keep some of the origin in that his family are all murdered. He's the only survivor, and Bruce Wayne takes him under his wing. That's all in there. But they have Two-Face kill his family. They have this kind of revenge story brought about. And then we go into the fourth movie, and they introduced Batgirl. Now, they changed Batgirl's origin as well. In the comics, Batgirl is actually Barbara Gordon. She is Commissioner Gordon's daughter. And this was the same in the Adam West TV show. But in this film, she's Alfred's niece. And it's this weird thing of like having this random version of Barbara brought in. She's still called Barbara, but she's not Barbara Gordon, obviously. But she comes in, and Alicia Silverstone, who played Batgirl, had just done Clueless and become a bit of a household name. Uma Thurman in the fourth one, playing Poison Ivy, very toned down from the version in the comics. And also Arnold Schwarzenegger cast as Mr. Freeze. But I actually think the biggest crime of all was the casting of George Clooney. Now, a lot of people can say, but George Clooney's a great actor. He is a great actor. I just think he was wrong for Batman. It didn't really work. And then, of course, Batman was, to quote Mr. Freeze, I suppose, or misquoting, put on ice for a little while at the cinema. Until 2005, when Batman Begins, which was directed by Christopher Nolan, was released. Now, I remember not hearing anything about this film. And then a trailer just suddenly being on at the cinema one day. And me and my brother, I can't even remember what we'd gone to watch, but we're just sitting there and going, hang about, there's a Batman film coming out. And so, yeah, we went to see it. And this began the sort of renaissance of Batman. And it was probably the thing that reinvigorated a lot of comic book movies from the DC side of things, certainly. This was a completely new take on Batman. The full origin was told in this movie. And I really enjoyed it. Really great casting. This has Christian Bale playing the role of Bruce Wayne and Batman. Michael Caine was brought in as Alfred. You had Liam Neeson, who was advertised as playing the role of Henry Ducard, but was actually Ra's al Ghul. Katie Holmes, who was also in there as Rachel Dawes, who was a friend of Bruce Wayne's from childhood, who is the assistant district attorney for Gotham. And of course, Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon before he's the commissioner. And we had Cillian Murphy. He played Dr. Jonathan Crane, a.k.a. the Scarecrow, marking the first on-screen live-action appearance of the Scarecrow, I believe. And then, of course, TA followed up with my favourite Batman film, The Dark Knight.
I'm in agreement with you on this one as well. This would be my favourite Batman film, I think.
So The Dark Knight had an interesting situation as well, because Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker. And much like when Michael Keaton had been cast as Batman in 1989, there's a massive uproar. Oh, how dare you cast him? He'd been in teen comedies. He'd been in Home and Away many years before that. He'd done Brokeback Mountain. He'd done the 10 Things I Hate About You. He'd done A Knight's Tale, which was a bit of a comical sort of turn as well. And people were just, oh, he's going to be awful. No one will be as good as Jack Nicholson. I think he's the best version of the Joker that's been done. I watched the trailer for The Dark Knight and I saw Heath Ledger in those brief little moments and just went, that is genius. And what I like the most about that version of the Joker is there's none of this. He's dropped into a vat of acid, and it kind of follows what would come in the next Batman film. So Batman actually says to wear a mask, and he has this chat, Bruce Wayne, with the character of John Blake, and he's saying to him, you know, the idea was that Batman could be anyone. I liked in The Dark Knight, the Joker could be anyone. It's the same coin, but two different sides. This idea that theoretically anyone could take on the mantle of being Batman and being the protector of this city, but at the same time, anyone could take on the mantle of this madman who wants to destroy it. And I thought that was a great take on there.
Yeah, his performance in this Ledger was something else, really. And it's very sad then in terms of him passing away, really, which, you know, didn't overshadow the film, but it just, kind of such a sad, because he get me right, the Oscar. It's quite sort of atmosphere in the room and amongst other actors. There's just this real sadness just running through it, really, that then he wasn't there to pick up that award for what would have been, you know, fully deserved for that performance. And I think you're right, he did definitely do the best Joker performance. The Jack Nicholson version in the 89 film was really good and was really well ordered at the time, but I think he definitely puts him into second place in this film.
We then round off the Dark Knight trilogy with The Dark Knight Rises, which I think is still a really good film. I don't think it's as good as The Dark Knight, but it introduces Tom Hardy playing Bane. Anne Hathaway is in there as Selena Kyle, so the latest version of Catwoman. And yeah, I thought this was a great way to end everything. It kind of goes back to the beginning in a way, where we have Bane, who is, at the time in the film, he's kind of pitched as being this child of Ra's al Ghul, but you actually find out that it's not him. And actually, there's a character called Miranda in there who Bruce Wayne has a romantic relationship with, and he finds out she's actually the child of Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul. And that then kind of sets up this finale with Batman and this bomb that's going to basically destroy Gotham, and sort of Batman trying to stop that from happening. And I think it's a great way to end the movie series. There was talk of trying to get Christian Bale to come back for the next appearance of Batman, which did divide audiences, and that being Batman v Superman, The Dawn of Justice, to use its full title. I don't mind this film, and I have to say, I really liked Man of Steel. Batman v Superman does this really weird thing where it tries to set Superman in the Batman world in a way. And I know Man of Steel's a little bit dark and brooding compared to other takes on Superman, but there's never really that balance of the two characters. And Batman in this film, we don't really know much about what's gone wrong. He's an older version of Batman. He's played by Ben Affleck, and he has lost a lot. They allude to the fact that Robin's been killed. There's the line, 20 years in Gotham, how many good guys are left, how many stayed that way. And it's kind of this idea of a lot of people who were good have probably turned evil or died. We don't really know because you never actually see what happened to Batman in this version. So it's a really tough one to kind of take on. I don't think Ben Affleck's terrible as Batman. I think you really need to introduce Batman in his own film and kind of show what had happened to him to make him the way that he was. And we never got that. Now, Ben Affleck did reappear as Batman in a few films. He makes a cameo in Suicide Squad. He also cameos in The Flash. And he's a key part of the Justice League movie, both versions. I, of course, allude to the theatrical cut known as the Justice League, due to Joss Whedon picking up the mantle after Zack Snyder stepped down. But the Zack Snyder cut of the movie is a brilliant film, and Ben Affleck really does show in that some great performance. And I think that it's a real shame that after this sort of set of films, his appearance in The Flash was really poor, the way it was written, and I just kind of felt like his version of Batman wasn't really treated with respect. Now, the Flash movie does have two other actors as Batman, and there's a spoiler in that. The non-spoiler is Michael Keaton comes back. He's the best thing about that movie. It's the original theatrical Batman in many ways. I know Adam West did a film, but the proper sort of theatrical release of Batman with the Michael Keaton version. And he comes back. So you have this older version of that Batman, and there's a really great scene where they go looking for Superman, and they don't find him. They actually find a version of Supergirl. But then at the end of the film, takes bits of like Man of Steel and rewrites it because it's in this alternative timeline. And it's just such a shame and such a waste of the Michael Keaton Batman, that final little part of the movie. However, and I will give away the ending of The Flash to people, it's not a great movie in my opinion, so I don't think I'm ruining things too much. But when Barry Allen goes back again and fixes the timeline, he goes back to the modern day and he gets a phone call from Bruce Wayne and he's talking to him. And the door opens and out steps George Clooney. And they do it as this kind of joke. And he's like, oh, well, you're not Batman. It's kind of like, oh, we're ending it now with the worst Batman as well. And I just didn't really think that movie did what it should have done. And it was such a shame with Michael Keaton coming back. They actually did a lot of promotion with Michael Keaton in that movie. And then, of course, prior to The Flash, there was another version of Batman. There was Robert Pattinson in The Batman.
I like this.
Like you say, Tia, it was a great film. What I really liked about it was in previous movies, Batman kind of strikes from the shadows. And so he'll just appear out of nowhere. And there's this brilliant scene where he just starts walking with these very heavy stomps of intimidation towards these criminals. And I love that slightly different take. Zoe Kravitz is in this as well as Selena Kyle / Catwoman. But she was a really good Catwoman. I think they've cast really good actresses to be Catwoman in every movie. I actually think they've never missed a step with Catwoman. Whereas with Batman, I think they have. They also cast Paul Dano as the Riddler. And this is a completely different take on the Riddler to anything else that we've seen. He's more of a kind of serial killer than this comical kind of take on things. And yeah, I don't know about you. I don't know what you thought about that slightly different version of the Riddler.
Well, I think the thing is when you're doing these sort of different versions of films, you've got to bring something new to the table, haven't you? I also think the filming with this, obviously they use like Liverpool and Glasgow, sort of UK cities, was quite an interesting backdrop for certain things as well. Yeah, it had a different feel to it, certainly, than many of the others. And we often joke about that me and certainly Mrs. Shano are not the biggest sort of fans of superhero films, but there are some that we go and see that we really enjoy, and I think this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant, and there is a sequel on the way. They actually just did a TV show based on the Penguin, who is played by Colin Farrell in this movie, and he's unrecognisable as the Penguin with all the prosthetics that they put onto him. I thought it's a much more sort of accurate version of the comic book Penguin in this, but yeah, I thought it was brilliant. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the TV show Gotham. I haven't watched a lot of it. I've watched bits of it. I know my brother watched a lot of it. And maybe at some point we could do a follow-up and get my brother to come on the podcast and talk a bit about Gotham. But that was certainly something that was quite popular as well, and gave a slightly different take on things. But there's been a lot of live-action Batman. We cannot talk about actors to play Batman without referencing the late, great Kevin Conroy, who voiced Batman in the 90s animated series. He also voiced him in the Arkham Trilogy of games. The Joker has been voiced by Mark Hamill in the 90s TV show and also in the Arkham games as well. We've got to pay tribute to those actors who did those voice performances as well. And there are some really good animated Batman movies out there. For me, I think Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker, that is a really good film. And for an animated movie, it's got some quite adult themes in there. There's actually two versions of it. There's kind of the kid-friendly version and then the more slightly violent and sweary. I think there's a couple of swear words in there. And does feature one Melissa Joan Hart providing a voice as well in that movie. But yeah, I think that's sort of the big thing with Batman. It's gone through a number of revisions, both on TV and on the big screen. We've got to just point out some of the other stories, like I say. So the Arkham Trilogy of games, I think that's brilliant. I know you've not played it, TA, but I'm a big fan of it, and it does bring back Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill doing those voices.
And did you not say that one of your next ideas is that you want me to play this game and sort of see what I think? I believe is one of your thoughts.
I think that would be a really great take because you're not really a gamer.
No.
Especially now.
For me, gaming really ended with Mario and Duck Hunt, I think. Was
terrible.
Apart from the occasional FIFA game thrown in over the years, yeah, my gaming is pretty limited, isn't it?
I think we should do it. I think it'd be really interesting to have you play a video game, whether it be one of the Arkham games or something else, not based on Batman or superhero properties.
Having me play a video game, to be fair, would probably not be similar to kind of the unfreezing of Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes in Demolition Man, bringing somebody back and going, and then this is how we play now. You remember messing with that silly gun way back when. Try and play this and see what you think of this sort of Batman game. You know what? You may convince me to do it.
Yeah, I think it'd be brilliant to do as a bit of a take on
and laugh at me. Very much.
No, I just think it'd be interesting to get your perspective on it as well. Because I mean, it's an old game now. It doesn't look great in comparison to some of the more modern stuff, but the storytelling and the whole sort of concept behind it is brilliant, and just to sort of give you a bit of an insight into it. It's essentially that Batman ends up stuck in Arkham Asylum with the Joker taking over the asylum and just sending waves and waves of enemies at Batman. And you have to kind of try and stop the Joker's plan. But it's brilliant. It's so well done. And I think the thing with Batman and the characters and the rogues gallery, and we haven't really been able to touch on it as much as maybe we would have liked to have done. But you think of characters like Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn was actually developed for the 90s TV show, for the cartoon. And she ended up being so popular. She ended up being added to the comics. She's had her own TV show. The Suicide Squad movies with Margot Robbie taking on the role. That's become a really big take on that character and become very popular. And they've actually reimagined Harley a little bit as a bit of an anti-hero as well, where she starts off obsessed with the Joker and the Joker just constantly treats her badly, and eventually she gets sick of it and starts to kind of see herself forming her own, at times a criminal gang, but she ends up just becoming a bit of a good guy in many sort of ways. So that's a really interesting one as well, and I think that has happened in other properties. But yeah, with the Harley Quinn character, that's quite an interesting take as well. TA, is there anything you want to kind of say about Batman? Because I do have something I would like to put forward for you as well.
Well, I'm interested in this now.
Well, I'm just thinking, and I've said this to you privately before, you've seen every film now in the Snyderverse bar one, technically two. So you've seen Man of Steel, you've seen Batman v Superman, you have seen Suicide Squad, and you have seen Wonder Woman.
I'll caveat, I fell asleep during Suicide Squad.
It's not a great movie, and that's nothing against David Ayer, who has wanted his own version of the film to be released, much like the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Doesn't matter about the fact you fell asleep during Suicide Squad, honestly. Although the sequel slash reboot, the James Gunn film, The Suicide Squad, is excellent, and I think you'll like that. But I think you should watch Justice League, the theatrical cut first, and then set aside a couple of weekends, maybe set aside 4 weekends, and watch the Snyder Cut as well, because I think that'd be really interesting to get your take on that. Because they are two completely different movies. It's mad when you watch them. And
I think the only way you're going to get me to do this is if we're going to be doing it for like a review or something.
That's what I mean.
So,
for the podcast, I think that'd be big.
I just don't think without doing it for the podcast, I'll invest that time into it without having a motivation.
But I think it makes a good thing to talk about in filmmaking in general as well, not just about the fact that it's a superhero film. Because there's so many things about that film that are crazy. And I think this is the thing that would be really interesting, is getting you to do that. I've realised I've spoken a lot here on Batman in this particular episode.
There's a phrase, "This is your barbecue." And
I'd never heard that till
if you're not. I am quoting from the film Con Air. Actually, Cyrus, "This is your barbecue," but I'm just, Nicolas Cage does the thing around. Anyway, so this is your world. The superhero stuff is much more you than me. I've thrown some bits in with my involvement, thoughts, the films I've liked, a few bits here and there. But this is very much, your grip. I couldn't do the same grip over it that you have. I'd only be really touching on the fact the performances that really stand out for me, I think looking back, is definitely the Jack Nicholson, the Heath Ledger, Joker ones, especially obviously the Heath Ledger one. I think Danny DeVito as the Penguin is another one that certainly jumps out at me. Yeah, so that's my kind of feeling on this. There's a lot of different versions, I guess, of this film. Some I enjoy more than others. And I'm not going to say what I thought of the Nolan trilogy, because you would just definitely get upset. And I thought about it earlier on, and I thought, will he let me do it or won't you?
Do it. Go on. Let me do it. He says no.
He's going to let me tell them. Okay, so, and I apologise to all you fans out there of this, but Rich and I, when we spoke about the Nolan trilogy of Batman films, having watched them all, I essentially categorised Batman Begins as I want to be Batman, The Dark Knight as I am Batman, and The Dark Knight Rises as I used to be Batman, I want to be Batman again. And I apologise for that, but that is my assessment of those three films. But there we go. You asked for what I wanted to say, and I wanted to say it, but I didn't want to offend you and anybody listening to this.
I love how you've just made it into this basic thing of just, he wants to be Batman, he used to be Batman, he is Batman, and all this.
To me, when I watched those films, that's kind of how they were a little bit themed. It was like, because it was a trilogy, it was a bit like the before, the, and the after, isn't it? It's, that's, I guess that kind of makes sense. And I'm not saying I've been influenced by that, but my books are kind of going the same way. You kind of, the after, the before, that's kind of, maybe there's a formula in that somewhere. So thank you to Christopher Nolan for the inspiration.
Well, after the previous episode where we said we should get him to direct the Doctor's Hidden Patients, I think after the way you've just described his Dark Knight trilogy, it will be telling you to jog on.
I think he'd be repeating though, wouldn't he? Because he'd be doing the same thing with a different set of things. He'd be going, we're doing the before, we're doing the, and then we'll do the after. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, sure.
I used to be, I will be, I am. I want to be, I used to be, I will be, I can be, I can't be, I will be.
Well, let's just leave it with this then, podcasters. Which do you think TA should do? Let's put the options out there. Either he plays the Arkham Asylum game, which is only going to annoy him for about an hour or two, or We make him sit through 6 hours worth of Justice League. I know which one I'm voting for.
You'll vote for all of it. That's what you're going to do. I don't want.
Oh, yeah. You know what? If we're making that an option, yeah, we'll make that an option too. Why not? We'll put a poll out and you guys can vote on it to let us know. But yeah, thanks for tuning in to sort of give a little bit of a talk about Batman there and a bit of a review. I haven't really said much about the graphic novels, and I will just say, The Dark Knight Returns, this is going to be criminal, me saying this, I'm not that big a fan of it. It's a good story, but I much more prefer The Killing Joke, which I know they referenced sort of elements of that into various movies. There are some really good animated movies, but I know you won't probably watch some of those. But I do thoroughly recommend looking up Batman Beyond Return of the Joker if you do want a good animated Batman story to watch. Mask of the Phantasm's one that's really popular, but I haven't actually seen that. But yeah, thank you very much, podcasters. And I suppose we should end this with a bit of a Batman themed sign off of tune in again soon. Same bat time, same bat channel.
I am Batman.
Thank you. One more middle-aged podcast in your life?
Of course you do. Follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes stuff, extra larks, and all our latest updates.
We're on Instagram and Threads at Middle-aged Bodcast.
Facebook's easier. Just head to facebook.com/middle-aged Bodcast.
If you're still hanging on to Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, we're at Middle-aged Bodcast.
And if you're on Blue Sky, it's at middleagedpodcast.bsky.social.
Or you can swing by our website, middleagedpodcast.co.uk.
Give us a follow and stay in the loop.
Cheers for listening.
Two best mates, yeah, they're taking a stand. Rachel, Rich, and TA got your health in the hands. Williams, laughs, and tales they tell. From beats and nights to workouts, they're keeping it real. Oh, it's the Middle-aged Podcast. Getting more, you ever